Hey guys, what is up? What is up? What is up? It is Rob from Crypto Bobby. Hope you guys are having a good day, night, wherever you are watching in from. Hope you're having a good one. Just wanted to pop in here today, talk a little bit. I didn't get a chance to do a recorded video today, but wanted to pop in, say what's up to you guys, see everything was rolling today, answer any questions that you might have. Just kind of take some comments off the air. We'll have a recorded video tomorrow. But if you can hear me, all right. What's up, John? What's going on, man? What's up, Mark? Hope you guys are having a good one. Just wanted to talk about, kind of what we might be seeing in the marketplace right now, kind of how things are looking moving forward with a lot of the action in the marketplace. Dwayne, Alex, what is going on, guys? Hope you are having a good one. So, past 24 hours, I don't want to say not much has happened, but I think things are a little bit stabilizing, especially if we're looking at the kind of Bitcoin charts. Things are a little bit stabilizing on the perspective of how things moved from that dive down to, if we move these to the 4-hour charts, how things looked from that dive all the way down to about $3,000 from Bitcoin, and have kind of ran up to close to $4,000 and have stabilized around $3,700, $3,600. So we're kind of seeing things, I want to say, consolidate a little bit here. I'm trying to figure out a little bit of where the next move might be for me, but if the China news, if the China market, if that's going to be something that is going to, we've had a nice little bit of recovery here, if that could continually sink the market somehow, if there's some other, like somebody said, maybe a little bit of a dead cat bounce here, and then we continually sink some things a little bit further. I'm trying to keep my finger on the pulse to get a good feel for what that is going to, or how we're going to move forward here, how things are going to end up playing out as best as possible. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts. Would really be interested in hearing in the comments as far as what you're thinking from where Bitcoin might be headed, if we're having a little bit of a if this bounce is short-lived and we're heading back to that low 3,000 range, or if you have some other thoughts, if you think we're in a position now to get back above 4,000, 5,000, we'll see. So as I'm listening, taking those comments, Alex mentioned, do you mind giving thoughts and opinion on Black Moon Crypto moving forward, your strategy for it moving into it? So for me personally, when I'm looking at Black Moon Crypto, and I'm looking at some other ICOs as well, Manetha, somebody else mentioned, was probably the most recent ICO that I've had any participation with. When I'm looking at something like Black Moon Crypto, I think it seems like to me right now there is a bigger gap between when a company ICOs, when they release their tokens to be tradable, and when those tokens actually hit the exchanges. I think that for me, I'm looking at the opportunity, at least I'm looking at kind of keeping things where I'm going to be potentially holding that type of crypto until it hits a larger exchange. I think there has been a little bit of a market downturn, and I think that might affect recent ICOs. I think it's kind of similar to, in a lot of cases, it's similar to an IPO market, where in the public markets, if the market sentiment is not great, then companies will either delay IPOing or whatever. This is somewhat similar, where if the markets are cooling off right now, I think you might see a little bit of a delay in future ICOs. But for the companies that have recently ICO'd, I think they're going to be all right. And with that being said, when you are playing that type of bounce, I think a lot of it, at least it seems like Manetha had a nice spike as soon as it became tradable, basically up 90% or so. But once it hits an exchange like a Bittrex or a Poloniex, I think it's going to be up significantly higher from where we're seeing. So that's my strategy, is at least holding till it hits a larger exchange. And then once we go from there, then you can see at that point in time, if you want to potentially take profits and move that back into, if you used Litecoin or if you used Ethereum, or if you used Bitcoin or Litecoin, and buy into that ICO, whatever you do, and then, kind of going from there. Somebody mentioned, do I like Paragon Coin? No, I think that's the ICO that's trying to be the blockchain of weed, and they're just advertising like crazy. Like, I bet they're all over my Twitter feed. I bet if I go on to, there's CoinMarketCap right now, there's a decent chance that their advertisement shows up down here. Who knows if it does or not, but yep, wow. I literally predicted that. So there we go. Paragon Coin, their ICO, they have 20,000 backers. They're seen on Forbes, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. And they have some random like model, and then they have the game, the rapper as well, who is within basically who is kind of the two people beyond the ICO, or participating in the ICO, and they have a technical team there. Just because you throw, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I mean, just because you throw blockchain on something, just because you say there's a cryptocurrency associated with, doesn't mean it's valuable. Because it's a weed ICO doesn't mean that it's going to be successful, because it has to do with whatever. Like that's something that I don't think necessarily holds a lot of bearing, as far as it doesn't, to me, sound like an incredibly sound business idea. And so I'm not in. And anybody that spends that much money, maybe, I don't know. They've been advertising like crazy all over the place. But we will see. We will see. So Jason mentioned on GDAX today, and I'll pull up Coinigy here, and this is pulling from the GDAX charts. So this is actually, you can see up here, GDAX to Bitcoin to USD. Yeah, there's also a Bitcoin ad, and if that tells you anything, BitConnect and Paragon Coin, throw them together, same boat. But somebody mentioned, so I'm on GDAX right now, or there's not a ton of movement today. What's the best strategy at this point? I would say, holding is always a good strategy. If that's kind of the way you want to go, holding is definitely a solid strategy. And I think just holding, dollar cost averaging is always a fantastic way to go. So stacking 9mm meant, or said, I like NAV. Bought in for a good amount of NAV, lots of good things. I've actually heard from a couple of different people within the industry, within the space, about NAV, and it's something that I had some interest, or I have some interest in checking out. And I do think privacy coins are going to continue to gain some level of, I would say, some level of success here as we move forward. Things like Monero have obviously done well. Zcash has come out with some good things, but that's kind of that. Jomar, what's going up, man? I always appreciate having you here. Just drinking tea like an old man too. So yeah, and to that point, I mean, there's a number of different privacy cryptocurrency coins, and with all the government regulation, I've talked about it a little bit before, but with all the government regulation, I think there's going to be an increased demand for people that want to have some level of privacy and security when they are interacting with a cryptocurrency, with the blockchain, so that they can move money without other people finding out, or whatever it might be. And even if that's not necessarily the use case, I think there are people that are investing based on that thesis. So people that are investing in something like Monero or Navcoin or Zcash or whatever it is, because they think that people are going to buy them because they want privacy. So that's important. So any other ICOs that have my attention in the near future? Alex, that's a good question. Right now, I don't have a ton. Enginecoin is one in the future that's interesting to me. I've talked about Enginecoin a little bit in the past, but outside of that, I'm talking to a couple of different guys in the space about what they have their eyes on. A lot of them don't allow for U.S. citizens, of which I am one. So I don't have, it's tough to be super interested in an ICO when you can't participate in it. Although, I do speak with a lot of only half the people that watch my YouTube channel are actually I think it's like 46% or so are U.S. citizens. So I realize a lot of you guys might be able to participate in some of these, but that's it's kind of my thoughts there. So I don't have too many right now that I have on deck that I am interested in, that I'm researching as well. So Lamar mentioned, looks like Bitcoin is out of the cryptocurrency market. How much will it affect Bitcoin's immediately? So, I mean, if we're looking right now, this is, and I could pull up, let's see if I can pull this. I mean, this is the Bitcoin charts from Coinigy. We can see here, let me see if I can, I can't remove that. But, I mean, the news of China really came in when we were in the 4,000s on Bitcoin, and it drove the price all the way down to sub 3,000 at one point in time, or about $3,000 at one point. So that's really kind of the initial shock of the China news, both the regulation ban around ICOs and then the actual shutdown of Chinese exchanges when it comes to moving fiat to Bitcoin. Now, there's a lot of different things that I think are still in development and a lot of news that is still to be had there. The one thing that I am hoping when it does come to China is that they are able to implement something like the BIT license that they do have available in New York, where that was a big deal regulation with, there was, I forget the name of the regulator within the U.S. He actually owns a consulting firm now helping cryptocurrency firms basically comply to the regulation that he put in. But to that point, New York created this BIT license that is a very stringent requirement to move US dollar into Bitcoin or into any cryptocurrencies. And there's only a few companies that are able to afford the regulation that goes into a BIT license. And namely, that is, I believe, Coinbase and GDAX, same thing. Gemini is another one. I think there might be one or two more. But outside of that, it's pretty tough. And I think that's kind of, from what I've heard, what China is hopefully trying to do with OKCoin and Huobi, because they're the two exchanges with the most volume, and they also have had the least amount of recently. Basically, OKCoin and Huobi have the least amount of shitcoins that are listed on their ICO. So, or recent, whatever. But to that point as well, if they can establish a similar type of like BIT license to what we have within New York, then that might be a positive thing long term as well, and that could hopefully help out and enable Chinese citizens to again be able to buy cryptocurrency with the yuan. So somebody mentioned, what is my opinion on JP Morgan buying the dip? So I don't know. I've seen a lot of stuff about that, and that was, I guess there's some type of, I don't know if it's an not necessarily an ETF, but it's like an over-the-counter. I don't know if it was the Bitcoin Investment Trust. I'll look at it. Let's see here. If it's something like this, Investment Trust, if it was this or if it was some other stock that is tied to Bitcoin, where after Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, basically came out and said Bitcoin is a fraud, and I'd fire anybody who tries to trade that. Apparently, the next day after Bitcoin crashed quite a bit on some of that news, as well as on Jamie Dimon's news, JP Morgan in Europe was one of the largest buyers of, it wasn't necessarily Bitcoin itself, but I think it was something like this, the Bitcoin Investment Trust, or some other over-the-counter type way to acquire cryptocurrency through the stock market, through the stock exchange. But that I don't know. I don't really know what to make of that, and we'll see there. Somebody mentioned, what is the best hedge against Bitcoin? I mean, it depends how you want to play things. So there's probably, I guess, I mean, you want to define hedge if you want to just have your money in fiat and keep it stable and move in that direction. You can certainly do that. If you're looking for just something to park in cryptocurrency in the short term, Tether is obviously something that mimics the US dollar and kind of hovers around $1. I've heard some different feedback as far as the actual stability of the Tether, so I don't know if that's something I'd ever want to keep your money in long term, but it depends on what you're looking to do from the standpoint of really hedging. I mean, there's a lot of, doesn't seem like a ton of cryptocurrency. Like if Bitcoin goes down a ton, typically drags a good amount of the market, if not the vast majority of the market, down with it. If Bitcoin goes up, usually a good amount of the market goes up with it as well. So a lot of things kind of trade with Bitcoin. Some of the altcoins will take, if Bitcoin goes down 5%, some of the altcoins will go down 15, 20%, 10, 15, 20%. But if Bitcoin goes up 5%, they might rocket up 5, 10, 15, 20% as well. So a lot of times when Bitcoin moves one way or another, the altcoins swing a lot farther and swing a lot harder, which is good and bad at the same time, depending upon if you're swinging up or if you're swinging down. And then Crypto Unit mentioned, do I see 6,000 or 7,000 before the end of the year? I mean, we still have, what do we have, 3 months left, about 3 months, 3.5 months left at this point in time. I think that's definitely a possibility. I wouldn't put it past. If there's good news, if some of the regulation gets sorted out, I think that's the type of thing. Also, if institutional money is able to kind of move into the space in a more free manner, that's definitely possible. A couple different things. One of the things that I heard, and this was actually, I thought, pretty good analysis. It was one of the guys from, I forget the name of him. It was on Twitter, but he was on CNBC, and he was talking to a panel on CNBC, and he owns, I believe, a fund. It's Fundstrat is kind of the fund he owns or participates in, and he was mentioning that depending upon how you value Bitcoin, but if it is able to gain 5% of the overall market capitalization of gold, Bitcoin is now functioning really as more of a store of value for the younger generation in a lot of respects and for kind of the more technically enabled generation. So he thinks that if Bitcoin can get 5% of the valuation of gold, that would put Bitcoin at around $25,000 per unit per Bitcoin within the next 5 or so years. I think that's a very realistic possibility. Now going at this point in time about, what are we saying, maybe 7x or so. I think that is absolutely a very realistic possibility to see. So Chris mentioned something about being semi-retired into crypto, paying yourself monthly, or I guess structuring basically an investment profit standpoint. I would say, quite frankly, to that effect, I would definitely consult an accountant. I would not want to give you any type of advice. That I think there's a couple different things from an investment perspective that you can probably reduce your taxable gains or reduce your taxable income as much as possible while still taking profits or paying. So I would work directly with an accountant and hopefully somebody has a little bit of specialization maybe within cryptocurrency so you can kind of keep a good understanding of that. Huir mentioned, what are the main reasons I think Enginecoin is a good investment? So, I mean, at least for me personally, when I'm looking at Enginecoin, and this is similar to, I think this is on a smaller scale, quite frankly, to Kin by Kick, which had an ICO or has an ICO. Enginecoin finished their pre-sale, which is good to see. Number one, which shows a good amount of excitement, at least around the platform, that they've already raised close to $10 million within their pre-sale. But the one thing that I think really excites me about Enginecoin is, number one, I think gaming is a logical transition for cryptocurrency. Granted, there are other cryptocurrencies out there right now that are working in the gaming space. So Enginecoin is not the only one that is doing gaming. But when you're talking about, they already have a platform. If you go to, I believe it's engine.com. What do we have? Engine.com here. So if we go to engine.com, they already have a platform that is already in existence where they are able to reach 18 million gamers. They have over 250,000 gaming communities that are actually hosted on with their tool. So I think that type of distribution is the biggest reason why I think that it could be successful. For me personally, a lot of these ICOs have great ideas or interesting ideas, but they don't have a distribution model. This cryptocurrency has a distribution model built into place, which is one of the more appealing things to me personally of why this is interesting. You could have the greatest idea in the world, but if you can't execute on it, if you can't get people to use the platform, then you're screwed. Enginecoin at least has a significantly better shot to reach gamers and to make their cryptocurrency make Enginecoin something of value long term. And then to that point as well, kind of one of the last things that I think is interesting is not just is kind of creating Enginecoin as something that ties to additional tokens so that not everybody on the planet has to trade like Engine tokens or hold Engine coins for every different game. It's almost this like platform to develop and create new virtual goods on top of Engine coin and then have that tie back. So that's something that I like to see, as well as almost functioning as and in a lot of cases, functioning as the payment processor, a decentralized payment processor, almost like a Stripe or a PayPal for these gaming companies. So Alex mentioned, what resources do you use to evaluate ICOs? ICO research is an interesting topic for sure. You can put a lot of time into ICO research, and I think that's something that is you do want to put a lot of time. If you're going to invest in an ICO, then you want to if you're going to invest in an ICO, you want to understand everything around it. It is number one, it's a risky proposition, numero uno. So the first thing you better do is you should fully read the white paper on every ICO that you plan to invest in, that you think about investing. Reading the white paper is the number one thing. I mean, that's 34 pages of research in and of itself. Granted, every white paper is basically written by that company, so take that with a grain of salt. In addition, there's a couple other places. Smith and Crown is a good one to get a feel for some of the ICOs that are out there. Reddit is another place that I like to go and search what people are, quite frankly, saying about the ICO on Reddit. If it's something they have confidence in, if it's something they don't. And outside of, I was listening to, it was an older podcast, but I was listening to a podcast. It's a good podcast, Unchained, I believe, the woman who runs it. It's definitely a more official podcast than kind of what I bring to the table, but she interviews a lot of people. She interviewed the guys that run this website, Smith and Crown, which has a lot of information around token sales. Granted, they almost have too much information right now. There's almost like too many. I could literally scroll through this all day long. It's like so many ICOs. It makes it freaking damn near impossible if you could see how fast I'm scrolling through this right now and get a feel for what that means. So I think they need a better way of sorting through a lot of this stuff. But when it comes to market research and getting ahead of the game, Smith and Crown is a good place to go and check out for sure. I like that, and it's a good place to get a good understanding. And outside of that, just try to participate with as many people in the community as possible. I've met a few different people in the New York area that are very heavy and interested in ICO research, have done very well in ICOs. So I to be honest, I lean on them. And their strong suit is ICO research. They're great guys, so I lean on them to kind of get a feel for what they see is upcoming in the marketplace. And then once I get a feel for what they like, then I do my own research as well. So sometimes I think one of the big things is trying to get a little bit of a feel for what people are interested in. Try to filter if you have people or websites that can filter out the crap, and then from there, do your own research based on what other people are telling you or what you see as popular and things like that. So Khyber, I've heard some fantastic things on Khyber. Unless I'm nuts, though, I believe either the participation is limited to participation is not allowed for people within the U.S., or if I'm nuts, or they just had a whitelist that I did not participate in, or I wasn't within the whitelist. But I've heard from pretty much everybody I trust within the space that Khyber is going to be one of those, I think, top tier ICOs. I have not, I think quite frankly, anytime somebody has an advisor with this guy's name right here, Vitalik, their ICO tends to do pretty well. It literally is like, I don't have statistics on it, but it's like if Vitalik is your advisor, you're going to 10x when you ICO. So, I don't know if that'll happen here. It's a different market environment than it was in June and July, but that typically lends itself well for sure. So Danny mentioned, what do I think about the state of Bitcoin right now? Heading down, ready to rebound, or uncertain? Quite frankly, I'm a little bit uncertain. I think we're in a little, kind of in a strange point right now where, we had this big sell-off from when Bitcoin tried to hit 5,000 up here. I'll put this in the 4 hours so we can see it a little bit better. We had this big sell-off when Bitcoin tried to hit 5,000 and has basically just been on a downward trend for the entire month of September. And then the China news really hit things hard. Some could say the JP Morgan news as well. And then we had this rocket up in the past couple days. And after this rocket up, we're still up a good amount, let's see how much off the bottom. We're still up about 22% off the bottom of where we were, but I don't know it's hard to kind of think about what's next. I mean, if this is a short-term pop and we're really headed back to those lows to retest $3,000, or if we can get back above $4,000, for me personally, I mean, I feel pretty comfortable with things at this level right now. I'm not panicking by any stretch. I think it's nice that a lot of this Chinese news is behind us, but I still think they could come out with more stuff that'll be negatives. Somehow, some way, FUD will materialize, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, Danny mentioned how about Litecoin, 25% of its volume comes from those two exchanges. It's definitely the volume within the Chinese exchanges. It's going to be interesting to see how that pans out, quite frankly. What will happen with the lack of volume that we will see, or the reduction in volume? I think eventually we're going to get past it and we're going to move through it, but short term, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't think it's going to have a super positive effect on the market. We might see more of a downturn. I'll see how things trend from this point of time, but for what I'm looking at right now, I don't see any need to be extremely bearish or extremely scared about. I don't want to say the worst has passed, but it seems like a good amount of bad news has passed. So unless some other country comes out with really bad news on regulation, really unless the United States comes out with some type of negative regulatory news, which I don't think they will, then I think we're okay here. So a couple of different people said, I wouldn't mind Bitcoin going lower for a while, more time to accumulate. I think that's the thought process of a lot of people now. And I think, if you are in the marketplace, you want to be in the marketplace for the long term. I think you want to think about what the guy on CNBC said the other day. I literally forget his name off the top of my head, but very rational comments. If the market goes down, that's when you dollar cost average. That's when you continually make moves. If you have the fiat, if you have the money to deploy, I think that's kind of the area. The area isn't when you're on these massive 200% spikes. The area is when you're 30% down over the course of a week or 2 weeks, and you continually dollar cost average and make sure that you can accumulate at a reasonable rate in which you're comfortable and which is financially feasible for you. Long term, I don't think $5,000 for me personally. This is my opinion. Yours could certainly be different, but I don't think if we look back in time, $5,000 is going to be the highest Bitcoin will ever be in the future. So if you are to look at certain things now, even if we get back to $5,000, you're looking at a jump of, let's say, if you were to get back to $5,000, just from the point we're at right now, you're still looking at another 33% gain, which is pretty incredible. So we'll see what happens, but I'm still pretty excited going forward. And that's one thing too. So Alex mentioned first, the link on the Khyber ICO on Google is a scam. So if you ever do search ICOs on Google, you absolutely want to be aware of these ads on the token sale. So this is a Google ad word. Google, I guess, isn't able to filter through all the crap that is going on right now, but you can see that this is the actual website for Khyber, is Khyber.network. This is tokensale.kybernet.network. So this website is kybernet.network. That's actually a fake website. I'm not going to click on that. I'm sure it looks pretty damn realistic and is basically ripped up from what Khyber Network has on their own website. But never click on an AdSense, never click on an ad word. whatever it might be within these ICOs, because that is a great way to lose your money. Same being said for like myetherwallet.com, any of these wallets. Just always be careful and always make sure that you're not, not running around clicking on fraudulent websites, because that is a great way to lose money. And you literally hear about that every single day, whether you're in Reddit, whether you're in, I forget what somebody, I don't even know if this was true, but there was one post that somebody lost like 300 grand worth of ETH like within the past couple weeks. And then there was somebody else that had, I don't know, a couple $1,000s, and they gave somebody their private key. They were like, oh yeah, somebody asked for my private key, so I gave it to them. Like, you probably shouldn't have $100 in crypto if you don't know that you should never give away your private key, let alone like multiple $1,000s. And guys, if you are new to the channel, definitely hit the subscribe button. I do the daily recorded videos. Didn't have a chance to do one today, but tomorrow will definitely be coming out. And luckily there wasn't too much crazy movement in the market today, but do the daily recorded videos and then hop in here for crypto happy hour, late night crypto happy hour. Tonight I'm just kind of relaxing, drinking some bedtime tea again, but usually have a beer, some whiskey with me. Hopefully you have a beer, whiskey with you as well at this point in time. But if you are new, definitely hit the subscribe button so that you can get notified when this type of stuff happens as well, when I am live on YouTube. And if you also want to hit the notify button, that's super helpful, so that when I do go live, not only do you see it if you log into YouTube, but you get a little notification button, so that's always cool too. And I know a couple of you are in the little like notify group and always throw out that bell, so that's pretty sweet, and I always appreciate that for sure. So somebody mentioned Civic. Yeah, for sure. I'm a big proponent, Caleb, of Civic CBC. I've liked that since the ICO. I've been a fan of that since the ICO. And somebody else mentioned, any thoughts on Ethereum? So I'll pull up Ethereum right now, take a quick look at that for you guys. So this is GDAX. Again, typically just the charting I use from Coinigy, GDAX. It's ETH to USD. And so it's been sitting above this 250 mark. It seems like there's a little bit of support at 250, but not an incredible amount. It's mostly, Ethereum has mostly been following Bitcoin on the ups and downs. Really hasn't decoupled too much from Bitcoin as of recently, at least. And I'm watching and I'm trying to pay attention as far as some of the technical advancements that go on, because I don't think that a lot of potentially respect is being given to some of the technical advancements that Ethereum has going on. And if they can pull that off in the next coming months, whether it's around Metropolis, whether it's around Raiden, I think ETH is in for a really big jump. And that'll be a really nice place for it to kind of move out of some of the ratio that it's been stuck to with Bitcoin for the past couple of months, really, since its big run up in April, May, and June. So I'm looking at how Ethereum can handle technical scaling, because I think that is an issue right now, with it only really being able to do like 7 transactions a second right now. You know, and some of these plans of Ethereum being able to handle 50 transactions, 100 transactions per second. Looking at Ethereum and how they can execute on that, I'd follow Vitalik to hear what he has to say, all the other developers. But keep an eye on how that's going to move forward, because I think that is going to drive a lot of the price action behind Ethereum, quite frankly, is how well, technically speaking, they can pull off these advancements that they're looking for. So Dow mentioned snagging about 0.8 BTC worth of ETH yesterday. Sounds like a good move, especially with the ratio down pretty well. One way you could always look at Ethereum from a US dollar perspective, or if you're in Europe, Euro. Another interesting way to look at Ethereum is on the ETH to Bitcoin ratio. And that is something that has fluctuated a good amount recently. I mean, you could see, but the big thing, and something that a lot of people point back to, is Ethereum had an incredible run in June and July, and then really kind of took a hurting when it came to things back in basically since Since June 15th, it hit a high of 0.16 ETH per Bitcoin and is now below, I believe it's now at 0.06. So it's down quite a bit from the all-time highs of what the, let's just say it's down about 50+% from the ETH to Bitcoin ratio. Alex Fine mentioned snagging some at 247. I think that's a good buy long term. I mean, you might see a dip short term. That's definitely potential, but long term wise, again, I've kind of said it before, and I'll say it again. I do expect Ethereum to push over its all-time highs in the future when a lot of the technical advancements like Metropolis and Raiden get pushed into place. So we'll see what happens there. Any thoughts on Dogecoin? Dogecoin is actually what got me into cryptocurrency as far as Dogecoin long term, and from like an investment perspective. I don't really think it's an investment, or it has a ton of use outside of just being a fun cryptocurrency for a lot of people and a good way to get into the space and learn about it. But from like an investment perspective or where I put my money, I don't know if I necessarily put my money into cryptocurrency. One thing that's pretty funny is, let's see, New York Times Business. Let's see if I can pull this up right now. This was the front page of New York Times Business. Where is our guy? Let's see. So Jackson Palmer, who I've had a chance to speak to. He also has a YouTube channel as well. Definitely check that out. But Jackson's a really good dude. I've talked to him on Twitter a bunch. He was one of the creators back in, I think it was late 2013, of Dogecoin. And he is, if you read the New York Times, I don't know how many of you actually read physical papers, but if you got the New York Times today, he was on the front page of the business section talking about potentially being a cryptocurrency bubble, specifically, I think, in regards to some of these smaller coins, some of these ICOs as well. But definitely check that out if you haven't read it yet. It's a pretty interesting article. I'll link to it right now if you want to take a peek at that. Yeah, so take a look at that New York Times article if you want. Absolutely feel free. So Alex mentioned, what are my thoughts on decentralized exchanges? So decentralized exchanges are interesting, but what I will say in regards to decentralized exchanges is I think they're going to be more and more important as we go in the future, because there's going to be more issues with centralized exchanges. So, whether it's these exchanges in China that are now forced to shut down, whether it is regulations in the United States around potentially Bittrex or Poloniex, where they're no longer able to have some of these recently ICO'd cryptocurrencies, decentralized exchanges are going to come to the forefront more and more often. EtherDelta right now is one of the biggest ones at this point in time, but the functionality of it's a more difficult system to use than potentially a Bittrex. So, I mean, if you go over to Bittrex, if you use Bittrex, I think Bittrex is pretty damn easy to use. EtherDelta is a little bit more complicated. There's basically a process of putting your Ethereum into EtherDelta, then you have to put your Ethereum into a smart contract, or you have to put your tokens, ERC20 tokens, into a smart contract, and then once it's in a smart contract, you have to put it into the order book, and there's just more processes around it, and there's a little bit more of a lack of security. Not a lack of security. There's more onus on the actual user itself. Like, you have a private key, you have a public key. You have to kind of understand that. If you lose your private key, you lose everything within the exchange. So decentralized exchanges will become more and more popular, in my opinion, in the future, but they need to kind of up their game, in my opinion, in terms of being as usable as a centralized exchange, because if they're not, then that's going to present it's hard for people. I know this as pretty much as a fact that a lot of people have reached out to me and they're like, hey, I wanted to buy Manetha, and I just couldn't figure out how the hell to use EtherDelta, so I'm going to wait until it gets onto an exchange or something else like that. So that's one thing that you want to be aware of when it comes to decentralized exchanges. I know there's a lot of different platforms. There's a lot of new ICOs that are decentralized exchanges. It'll be interesting to see how those pan out, if they do really create some great products or not, but we'll take a look at it. So Caesar mentioned, what do I think about Ripple as a long-term investment? For me, Ripple, it's not the most interesting cryptocurrency, just in my opinion, because of kind of the, I don't know, it's more of a it's number one, they hold, I mean, if you go to Ripple right now, if we look in CoinMarketCap, I believe there are, let's say 1 trillion Ripple, or excuse me, no, 100 billion Ripple that will be in existence. Right now, there's only a supply of 38 billion Ripple. So Ripple is a centralized company. They still hold the majority of the circulating supply, or the majority of the total supply. And Ripple's whole goal is working with, or a lot of the goal of Ripple is working with big banks, big institutions, and creating an enterprise type blockchain solution for payments. I think in a lot of ways that companies can use private Ethereum blockchains to accomplish a similar type of thing to what they might want to do with Ripple. And I also think that from an investment perspective, there are a lot of people out there that, might not necessarily be as interested in investing in a Ripple because of its association with the banks and with a lot of these larger institutions. We'll see, but it's just, I know some people that have done really well. I have a friend who did excellent within Ripple, was a long-term holder of Ripple, and when it went up quite a bit, then he made a fantastic amount of money. But for me, it's not the most interesting it's not the most interesting crypto. It's just, for me personally, everybody has different tastes, though. It is what it is. And guys, as far as things are going now, too, like I said, I'm going to come out with a recorded video tomorrow, depending upon what happens this evening. After I go to sleep tonight, it is the U.S., so it's almost midnight now. But I have a little bit of work to do outside for the day job tomorrow. But outside of that, going to put together a recorded video for y'all tomorrow, so you can take that in. But if you are new here, definitely hit that subscribe button so that you can get all of this content when it comes out. And if you are subscribed but you don't have the notify button, there's that little bell next to the subscribe thing. If you're watching this on a mobile or if you're on your laptop, hit the little bell too, so you can get so you can get a notification anytime I go live or a new video pops out, that you get the latest information. I try to, when I do these recorded videos and when I do the live videos, for the most part, the past 24 hours hasn't been too crazy, but if something crazy happens in the marketplace, if we have a market move, I will pull up, where do we got it here? If we have a move like we did with China, when the price crashed with China, if we have a movement like that, when we're going down in the dumps, I'm trying to create a recorded video for you guys to stay on top of it. If we have a move like this green candle, I had a video during that green candle, so I try to be as helpful as possible, as quick as possible with the news. So definitely hit the subscribe button. But outside of that, guys, my bedtime tea has hit me, so I'm gonna hit the hay in the near future here. I appreciate all the comments, guys. Thank you so much for coming in live. If you ever need anything at all, definitely just let me know. Shoot a comment on the video after the fact, or if there's anything that I can do at all to be of service or help, please let me know. Try to be as helpful as possible to enable you to be as successful within this cryptocurrency world as I humanly possibly can. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day or night wherever you're watching this from. I know a lot of people